There's a certain kind of man who moves through the world differently. You can't always explain in words, but you feel it the moment he enters a space. He doesn't announce himself. He doesn't chase attention. He doesn't try to be noticed. And yet, people notice. Not because he demands it, but because his very presence carries weight. The kind of weight that comes from a man who no longer needs approval. This man lives by principles most men never even discover. He doesn't speak to fill silence, but when he does speak, his words matter. He doesn't flail around in constant motion, yet somehow he creates more impact with less effort. He doesn't chase anything, and yet everything moves toward him. He is a mirror of nature, a student of the Tao. He has learned what Lao Tzu whispered through the centuries. A man with outward courage dares to die. A man with inward courage dares to live. That is his difference. He dares to live, not for validation, not for applause, not for fleeting attention of others, but simply to live, without grasping, without clinging, without letting his worth depend on what collapses when held too tightly. Other men are restless. He is still. Other men react. He observes. Other men fight for her attention. He walks by unimpressed. And that is when everything shifts. That is when she notices, not because of his words, not because of his looks, not because of flashy effort, but because of the opposite, his absence, his calm, his self-possession. She begins to wonder, why doesn't he chase me? Why doesn't he try? Why doesn't he need me? Because she's seen men try before. She's seen them bend themselves out of shape, sell themselves with words, show off their best angles, overcompensate with energy, over-explain their intentions. But rarely, so rarely, has she seen a man who feels complete before her. Not closed off, not cold, not immune, simply whole with or without her. This man doesn't avoid love. He just isn't starving for it. He isn't desperate. He is selective. His life is already full, already meaningful. He has cultivated solitude until it became peace. He has turned silence into strength. And she can feel that. She senses that his mind is not free real estate, not just anyone's playground. She senses that his emotions are not unlocked with a smile or a compliment. She senses that even if she were to capture his attention, it would cost her something real, because this man isn't for rent. He isn't for free. He isn't available in bulk. He is rare. And in a world addicted to easy access, rarity creates value. It creates mystery. It creates pursuit. But here's the most dangerous part. He isn't trying to create those things. He simply is those things. He became whole before he was wanted. That, more than anything, makes him unforgettable. And let's be clear, this isn't about games. This isn't about pretending to be something you're not. This isn't about withholding affection or playing tricks. The man I'm describing doesn't withhold. He simply doesn't give where he isn't truly moved to give. His restraint isn't a tactic. It's instinct. He doesn't speak just to break silence. He doesn't move just to avoid stillness. He doesn't hand out his energy like free samples. And because of that, people, especially women, begin to feel the weight of his absence more than the noise of other men's presence. They sense the gravity of his standards, the tension in his calm, the depth of his attachment. It's there in the way he looks without staring, in the way he listens without instantly agreeing, in the way he gives space instead of smothering attention, and time instead of shallow approval. And the most fascinating part, he's not doing it to watch her reaction. He's not calculating. He's not taking notes. He doesn't need her response to validate his choices, because his choices come from something deeper. Discipline, purpose, vision. Most men think proximity equals intimacy. They think that being close, being available, being quick to respond, being endlessly supportive, that this is what earns desire. But the man aligned with the Tao knows that's not how it works. Desire lives in distance. Desire breeds in unanswered questions. Desire grows in mystery. As Lao Tzu wrote, to hold, you must first open your hand. Let go. And so, this man lets go. He lets go of control, of outcome, of neediness. He doesn't try to manipulate emotions because he has no desire to control what doesn't belong to him. He doesn't chase connection because he already has one with himself. He doesn't chase what is running away because anything that runs was never his to keep. You have to understand, there is no technique more powerful than authentic inner peace. There is no tactic more effective than genuine indifference. There is no signal more intoxicating to a woman than the realization that a man feels no need to be understood. And this is when the shift begins inside her. She starts asking questions. Why is he so free? Why doesn't he need me? What does he know that I don't? She becomes entangled in the mystery of his restraint. Not because he withheld, but because he didn't automatically get what she thought she deserved by default. That is the foundation of the mind game. To live in such a way that your presence feels like a privilege, not a cheap prize, not something handed out at a discount, but something earned. To walk the earth with quiet certainty. You are not here to chase, but to choose. Not to convince, but to observe. Not to perform, but to become. And when a man steps into that energy, the entire dynamic changes. She doesn't talk about him the way she talks about other men. There's hesitation in her words, curiosity in her eyes. Because he didn't fall into the predictable pattern of attention, validation, and availability. He disrupted it, not with arrogance, but with presence. Not with mystery, but with mastery. The truth is, she's not used to this. She's not used to not being pursued. She's not used to wondering, waiting, questioning. But now she is, because he gave her something rare, space. And not the kind of space that disappears with time. The kind that expands. The kind that makes her world feel quieter without a minute. The kind that forces her to reflect on herself, because he is no longer orbiting around her. She starts checking for his presence the way most men check for hers. She rereads conversations not to replay his words, but to feel close to the silence that followed them. She thinks before she texts. She asks her friends, what do you think it means that he hasn't replied? And why? Because his energy lingers. Stillness leaves a deeper mark than noise. And his stillness has become unforgettable. This isn't about creating anxiety in her. It's about creating value in yourself. The man who understands the Tao doesn't overextend. He doesn't flood people with access. He moves like nature, subtle, powerful, seasonal. He offers his presence like rain. It comes when it's needed, not when it's demanded. It nourishes the right ground and passes over wrong. Lao Tzu wrote, "He who knows others is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened." This man chooses a second. He moves when aligned. He stays silent when it's not. He doesn't act to be remembered, because what is unforgettable doesn't need to remind you it exists. And that is the core of his magnetism, not in what he gives, but in what he holds back, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. His energy says, I am available to what serves my vision. I am open to what sharpens my focus. I am drawn to what deepens my peace. And everything else can stay at a distance. This isn't coldness. This is precision. This is selective fire. And when she realizes he is willing to walk alone, that's the moment she begins to wonder what it would take to walk beside him. When a man stops chasing, he doesn't become passive. He becomes powerful. Most men confuse withdrawal with weakness. But real withdrawal, the intentional, grounded, sovereign kind, is a sign of deep strength. It's the act of a man who knows his value so clearly that he refuses to spend it where it isn't recognized. He's not avoiding intimacy. He's filtering for alignment. He isn't distant. He's deliberate. And in that precision, she feels something she's never felt before. It isn't rejection. It's a challenge. Not because he's playing hard to get, but because he simply is hard to get, not by strategy, but by design. The truth is simple. What is rare is always protected. What is powerful is never loud. What is sacred does not advertise. Lao Tzu once wrote that water is the softest thing in the world, and yet it wears down rock. It yields, but it never breaks. It bends around resistance, but it never stops moving. That's the energy of this man. He doesn't argue. He doesn't plead. He doesn't fight for what has to be chased. He flows around it, and he continues forward. And when she feels that, when she realizes she cannot pressure him, cannot impress him, cannot manipulate him into compliance, she comes face to face with a rare truth. She is in the presence of a man who cannot be conquered. And what cannot be conquered cannot be forgotten. That's where the mind game deepens. Because now she isn't just curious, she's invested. She doesn't just want to be wanted. She wants to be chosen. Not because he's aloof, not because he's rude, but because his energy communicates one fundamental truth. You don't get access to my world unless you bring something real. He's not holding out for attention. He's not rationing affection to create panic. He simply values his peace more than her approval. And that changes everything. Because once a woman realizes your life is already full, your day is already rich, your vision already clear, and your soul already nourished, she stops wondering whether you'll pick her. Instead, she starts wondering if she's good enough to be picked. That is the reversal. That is the mind game. That's when the entire dynamic shifts. Not because he said the right line. Not because he played it cool. But because he became the mountain. And the mountain doesn't come down to meet the climber. The climber either ascends or she turns back. Either way, the mountain remains unmoved. Now she feels it, not as a trick, not as a tactic, but as gravity. She used to be the one pursued. She used to be the one with options, with constant attention, with endless noise around her. But when she's near him, all that noise fades away. What she feels instead is something different, not insignificance, but unpreparedness. She's unprepared for a man who doesn't move on impulse. Unprepared for a man who doesn't apologize for having standards. Unprepared for a man who doesn't compete for affection, because his affection has value even without competition. This man isn't swayed by beauty. He's seen beauty before. He isn't searching for validation. He validates himself through discipline. He doesn't chase company. His mission is his company. And that's the paradox, because the more he stands still in his strength, the more unstable she becomes. The quieter he gets, the louder her thoughts grow. The less he seems to care, the more she finds herself consumed. Not because he's manipulating her emotions, but because his presence doesn't feed her ego. It demands her essence. And this is why women chase such men. Not because they are cold, but because they are pure. They are free from desperation, from performance, from the disease of needing to be seen. Lao Tzu said, "When you are content to be simply yourself and don't compare or compete, everyone will respect you." This man lived that truth. He doesn't step into the marketplace of desire, trying to outshine other men with tricks or charm. He doesn't audition for love. He doesn't perform for validation. Instead, he embodies love of self so fully that he naturally attracts those who are tired of noise and hunger for peace. His life is his fortress. His solitude is his kingdom. And the only way in is not through games, but through grace, alignment, and authenticity. She begins to sense that being near him costs something. Her illusions, her control, her masks. And for the first time, she understands what it means to want a man who doesn't need to want her back. That's where obsession begins. Not because he pressed her emotional buttons, but because he revealed her limits. He forced her to confront parts of herself she usually hides. And now she has a choice, rise or retreat, because he will not move. He will not beg. He will not chase. He remains still. The man she cannot stop thinking about isn't mysterious by design. He is grounded by nature. His confidence isn't loud. It's unquestioned. His silence isn't empty. It's charged. Every word he speaks carries weight because he doesn't waste his breath on empty conversations. Every gesture matters because he doesn't give his energy away like candy. He has stepped beyond performance, beyond charm, beyond tactics. Because he has seen what most men never realize. The moment you act just to be desired, you abandon your power. But the moment you stop needing to be desired, you become the desire. He has no interest in being liked. No interest in being everyone's favorite. His presence is not a service. It's a standard. And that standard will naturally repel the shallow, while magnetizing the rare. She begins to feel that every interaction with him has weight. That she is earning moments, not being gifted them. And not because he withholds, but because he doesn't offer what isn't deserved. Now the game flips inward for her. She becomes the one asking, what does he see when he looks at me? Why do I feel exposed around him? Why do I crave his attention but fear it at the same time? Because his attention doesn't flatter. It reveals. It doesn't show her who she wants to be. It shows her who she already is. Most men give attention like a drug. Temporary, addictive, fleeting. He gives it like a mirror. And a mirror never lies. Lao Tzu said, the wise man is one who knows what he does not know. And this man carries that humility. Not because he's weak, but because he's so strong he doesn't need to prove anything. That is what makes her obsessed. He sees through her games. He sees beyond her beauty. He listens between her words. And in a world where she's used to men chasing the fantasy of her, he alone stays focused on the truth. That's what makes him dangerous. Not because he is cruel, but because he can see her without needing her. And that terrifies her, because it means she can't seduce her way into his heart. She can't manipulate her way into his soul. She must rise or she must leave. He will vanish like mist if she doesn't. Unbothered, untouched, unclaimed, he doesn't belong to the world. And that's exactly why the world tries to belong to him. He doesn't win her by out-talking other men. He wins her by outlasting their noise. He doesn't dominate conversations. He becomes a silence she replays when the world is loud. He doesn't post to be seen. He moves through life as if being seen is a side effect, not the goal. And by the time she realizes he's unlike any man she's ever met, he's already gone. not because he's bitter, but because the river never stops flowing just to be admired. That's the truth. He doesn't stay to prove his worth. He moves because movement is natural. He lets go because clinging is weakness. He builds because he was born to create, not to convince. And once you understand this, you see the deeper truth. The man who lives aligned with the Tao doesn't beg to be wanted. He becomes a force that cannot be ignored. He doesn't chase relationships. He doesn't orbit women. He doesn't sit around waiting for someone to validate his existence. Instead, he builds a life so full, so rare, so complete that the right woman doesn't just want him. She rearranges her life to walk beside him because she knows something crucial. This man is not coming back. He doesn't orbit. He doesn't linger. He doesn't wait around to be chosen. He is loyal to his path. And the deeper he walks into that path, the more he becomes a legend in her mind. In the end, this isn't about tactics. It isn't about games. It isn't about image. It's about alignment. Because when you become the man who needs nothing, the world begins to offer you everything. She doesn't pursue him because he made her feel special. She pursues him because he made her feel something sacred. Something she didn't even know she was missing. A stillness that shook her chaos. A standard that awakened her self-respect. A power that called her to rise. Or risk being forgotten. He is the test. He is the mountain. He is the unbothered flame that keeps burning even in the middle of a storm. And men like that, men of that depth, that stillness, that gravity, they aren't found. They're followed. Now, let's be clear. This isn't about arrogance. This isn't about faking confidence. This isn't about playing cold. It's not about withholding love or pretending to be too cool. None of that has real power. Those things are tactics. And tactics fall apart under pressure. This is about becoming so aligned with who you are that you no longer bend yourself to be liked. It's about building such a strong relationship with your own life that you're never afraid to walk alone. It's about living in such a way that your presence feels like a privilege. Not because you're trying to make it that way, but because you are that way. And when she senses it, when she realizes you will not break your discipline for her, you will not abandon your path for her, you will not compromise your peace for her, something happens. She shifts. She goes from expecting your pursuit to wondering if she even qualifies for your attention. That is the power of stillness. That is a reversal of the chase. Because here's the paradox. The more you need be desired, the less desirable you become. But the moment you no longer need be desired, you become the desire. And that's what shakes her, because she's used to men competing. She's used to men fighting for a place in her world. She's used to being flattered, entertained, catered to. But now, she meets a man who doesn't move that way. And suddenly, she finds herself the one unsettled, the one questioning, the one pursuing. His presence doesn't flatter her ego. It awakens her essence. His silence doesn't make her feel ignored. It makes her feel exposed. His stillness doesn't push her away. It pulls her inward. That's why she can't stop thinking about him. Not because he's mysterious, but because he's real. Not because he's cold, but because he's clear. Not because he plays games, but because he refuses to play them. This man doesn't need to outshine anyone. He doesn't need to prove anything. He doesn't need to perform. He has already won the only game that matters, the one within himself. And when she realizes that, her obsession deepens. Because she knows she can't just show up with surface-level beauty, shallow charm, or easy affection. She has to bring something more. She has to bring truth. She has to bring essence. She has to bring alignment, because he doesn't belong to the crowd. And that's exactly why the crowd longs for him. He doesn't win by chasing. He wins by outlasting. He doesn't dominate conversations. He becomes a silence she replays when the noise fades. He doesn't post to be seen. He lives in such a way that being seen is just a side effect. And the irony? By the time she fully understands who he is, he may already be gone, not out of bitterness, not out of cruelty, but simply because the river never stops flowing. The mountain never moves for the climber. The fire never dims for the storm. He doesn't stay to prove himself. He doesn't cling to be remembered. He doesn't beg to be chosen. He walks because walking is his nature. He creates because creation is his calling. He lets go because clinging is weakness. That is the essence of a man aligned with the Tao. He doesn't beg to be wanted. He doesn't manipulate to be loved. He doesn't perform to be admired. He becomes a force that cannot be ignored. And the right woman, when she feels that, she doesn't just want him. She rises to meet him. She restructures her life. Not because he asked her to, but because she realizes that if she doesn't, she'll lose a chance to walk beside something rare. Because this man This mountain, this river, this flame, he does not come back. He doesn't orbit. He doesn't wait. He doesn't apologize for his path. He remains loyal to his vision. And the deeper he goes, the more he becomes unforgettable. So hear me when I say this. It's not tactics. It's not tricks. It's not about withholding or playing games. It's alignment. It's presence. It's peace. When you stop chasing, you don't become passive. You become powerful. When you stop performing, you don't become cold. You become real. When you stop needing to be seen, you stop being forgettable. Because the world has seen enough noise, enough flattery, enough desperation. What it craves, what she craves, is stillness, discipline, presence. The man who embodies it doesn't have to remind anyone he exists. His energy lingers long after he's gone. His silence speaks louder than other men's words. His standards reveal truths that charm never could. And that is why women chase him. Not because he made them feel special, but because he made them feel sacred. Not because he pursued them, but because he revealed themselves. Not because he promised them anything, but because he never needed a promise at all. This man is a test. The mirror, the fire, the mountain. And if you felt something in these words, if you see yourself stepping into that energy, or if you already know you are, then you know exactly what I mean. So here's the call. Step into it fully. Don't chase. Don't perform. Don't dilute yourself to be liked. Build your path. Build your presence. Build your peace. And once you do, you'll see it. You'll feel it. You'll live it. Because when you become the man who needs nothing, the world offers you everything.